I want you to think back for a second. Have you ever told a tiny lie? Or maybe played a small prank that just completely spiraled out of your control?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Right. You start with something incredibly small, a little inside joke meant for one or two people, and suddenly it just takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, before you know it, literally everybody is talking about it. They're adding their own bizarre details.
Exactly. And you were just standing there, completely powerless to stop the avalanche you just kicked off.
It is a terrifying but honestly universally human experience. You toss a pebble expecting a tiny ripple, and
To
instead,
trigger a tidal wave.
exactly, you accidentally
Yeah.
trigger a tidal wave. It's that exact realization, that moment you realize you can no longer dictate the boundaries of your own creation, that makes those moments stick in our minds.
And today, for this deep dive, we are looking at the ultimate historical example of an avalanche born from a pebble. We are exploring the legend of the Glastonbury Wild Man.
Such a fascinating piece of source material.
It really is. It's this wild Vermont mountain hoax from the late 1800s and early 1900s. And our mission today is to deconstruct how a harmless joke in a rugged logging town transformed into a massive regional sensation.
A sensation that literally outlived the town itself.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can even understand how the monster was created, we need to understand the environment that allowed the myth to take root.
Right. To truly grasp the mechanics of how this exploded, we have to immerse ourselves in the setting. We're in Glastonbury, Vermont.
And this is the late 1800s, right?
Yes, the late 1800s bleeding into the early 1900s, right in the heart of the southern Green Mountains. And this was a profoundly remote, rugged little town.
I mean, the people who lived there were tough.
Extremely tough. They were engaged in heavy logging, subsistence farming, and they were surrounded by some of the thickest, most unforgiving woods in New England.
And when we say thick woods, we really need to emphasize the reality of a pre-electricity wilderness.
Oh, absolutely. It's a completely different kind of dark.
Yeah, it's the kind of deep, oppressive darkness that genuinely messes with your sensory perception. I like to compare this isolated, heavily wooded setting to a blank canvas for the imagination.
That's a really good way to put it.
Because, if you have ever been out in the thick woods at night, far away from streetlights, you know exactly how the human mind operates. Every single snapping twig sounds like a predator.
It really does.
The shadows stretch out in unnatural ways, the wind shifts through the pines, and suddenly you are biologically primed to believe that something large is out there watching you.
Right, and that psychological state is crucial. That specific claustrophobic isolation made the town prime real estate for mischief.
Because there's nothing else going on.
Exactly. A logging camp in the 1890s is essentially a sociological pressure cooker. It is isolating, the work is brutally exhausting, and entertainment is practically non-existent.
But we should clarify, the original intent wasn't a mass deception.
No, not at all. The vital thing to remember is the origin of this hoax. The initial intent of these pranksters was never some grand, malicious plan.
They weren't trying to become famous or, spark a regional panic.
Right, they weren't looking to get their names in the history books. It was just a few locals wanting to blow off steam. They wanted to play a harmless trick on their coworkers, and perhaps terrify a few outsiders passing through the area.
So they were basically weaponizing that natural fear of the dark woods.
Exactly. They just tapped into that primal fear you just described.
Okay, so they have the perfect creepy backdrop, and they have the motive to mess with their friends. But an active imagination isn't enough to sustain a town-wide panic.
No, it takes more than just a scary story.
Right, somebody had to actually light the match. So how do they move from a funny idea in a tavern to executing a hoax that fooled an entire region?
Well, they moved into physical production. They didn't just sit around whispering scary stories. They manufactured tangible evidence.
Wait, like physical props?
Yeah. These locals actually started carving oversized wooden feet, strapping them to their boots, and stamping massive, strange footprints deep into the mud around the logging camps.
Oh, wow. That is dedication to a bit.
It really is, and they would sneak out into the brush in the dead of night and let out these guttural, unearthly howls.
Just to mess with people.
Yep. And simultaneously, they began seeding rumors around town, very casually mentioning a hairy, giant creature lurking up in the high hills.
Now, wait a minute. I have to push back on this a bit because the logic here feels flawed to me.
Oh, how so?
Well, we are talking about a town full of professional loggers, trappers, and farmers. These are people whose entire livelihoods depend on understanding the outdoors.
That's true, they were experts.
Right. They know exactly what a bear track looks like. They know the gait of a moose. They know what a coyote howl sounds like. How in the world did a few guys clumping around with wood blocks fool serious outdoorsy people?
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of the feedback loop. Specifically regarding how information was validated at the time, you really have to look at the media landscape of the late 19th century.
Okay, so what was the sequence of events?
Well, first, the pranksters lay down some rudimentary physical evidence. A few locals get spooked, but as you said, many probably cast a skeptical eye at first.
Right, they'd assume it's just a bear.
Exactly. But then comes the critical turning point: the newspapers decide to print it.
So the media gets involved. But why does that suddenly erase the skepticism of a seasoned logger?
Because print media in the late 1800s carried an immense, almost unquestionable authority, especially in isolated communities.
I guess there's no competing media.
Exactly. There was no internet to cross-reference, no broadcast news to offer a counter-narrative. If a typesetter in a larger town printed a breathless headline about a 10-foot hairy beast roaming Glastonbury, the psychological barrier of doubt was significantly lowered.
So black ink on broadsheet paper was treated as absolute truth.
Yes. Once the townspeople read about this creature, they stopped trusting their own instincts. They started interpreting every normal, unexplained noise in the woods through the lens of this newly validated monster.
It's exactly like when you hold a microphone too close to a speaker.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, a tiny, imperceptible noise, which is the prank, gets picked up by the microphone. The amplifier, the newspaper in this case, cranks it up and blasts it out.
Right, and it just feeds on itself.
Exactly. The mic picks up that amplified sound, feeds it back in, and within seconds you have this ear-splitting screech that has everyone in the room completely covering their ears.
That is the perfect analogy. The newspapers amplified the joke into a documented fact. And because the town now believes it and the regional papers are eagerly printing updates, the pranksters find themselves in a highly dangerous predicament.
Because they have to keep it going.
Yes, they are forced to escalate. If the newspaper declares the beast is highly active and dangerous, the pranksters have to go out and make sure the beast seems highly active and dangerous.
Oh man, so they're trapped by their own joke.
Totally trapped. They had to plant deeper footprints, make louder noises, and push the boundaries of the joke just to keep up with the legend they had accidentally birthed. If they stop, the illusion shatters.
But they can't control the volume knob anymore. As they keep escalating, the community fully takes ownership of the myth, stripping the creators of their control.
Complete ownership. The hoax reaches this boiling point where serious, heavily armed hunters are trekking into the woods looking to bag this creature.
Wow, so posses were formed.
Oh yeah, organized posses. There were actual cash bounties being offered to capture or kill the Glastonbury Wild Man.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This is essentially an early analog version of a viral internet challenge.
Think about the physical danger that puts the pranksters in.
Exactly. Someone creates a silly video or a fake rumor online today just for a laugh.
Correct?
But the algorithm catches it, it escapes containment, and suddenly millions of people are involved and it causes real-world physical action.
With people showing up to real locations, demanding answers.
Right. These pranksters in Vermont went viral a century before the internet. They posted a fake footprint in the mud, and the town algorithm, the local gossip and print media, amplified it until guys with Winchesters were actively hunting the punchline.
It's terrifying. Imagine being the prankster, sitting in the tavern, watching 20 of your neighbors gear up with rifles to go shoot the thing you made up.
You certainly can't raise your hand and confess at that point. The embarrassment and the anger from the community would be overwhelming.
No, you'd be run out of town. But this raises an important question. Why was the community so eager to adopt this monster?
Well, why did they? Just for the thrill of the hunt.
Because it wasn't just glory-seeking hunters looking for a trophy. The wild man transitioned from a spooky rumor into an incredibly convenient, community-wide scapegoat.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, the town started blaming this mythical creature for missing livestock, ruined crops, and just any bump in the night.
Which is so brilliant.
Right.
Economically speaking, you can just say, I didn't leave the gate open and lose the sheep. The giant hairy monster ripped it off its hinges.
Exactly. It reveals a profound psychological desire to blame the unknown rather than accept mundane personal failures.
Because farming back then was brutal.
It was. Let's look at the reality of the 1890s. A lost sheep or a broken piece of expensive farming equipment was a massive financial blow. And more often than not, It was due to human error.
But admitting that incompetence to your family or peers carries a heavy social cost.
It severely bruises the ego.
Right, you're a tough mountain farmer, you aren't supposed to make careless mistakes.
Precisely. Enter the wild man. Suddenly, your incompetence is totally erased. You aren't a careless farmer, you are the tragic victim of a supernatural, unstoppable beast.
Wow. So there is no shame in losing a sheep to a 10-foot monster.
None at all. It removes the blame from the individual and places it onto a grand, mythical, external force. The monster served a very real, protective psychological purpose for the entire town.
I mean, we do the exact same thing today. When a project fails or the internet drops out, we blame the algorithm or some nebulous corporate entity rather than admitting we missed a deadline.
It's human nature.
So the town basically needed the monster to exist, just to cover up their own bad farming. But eventually, reality has to crash the party.
It always does.
A town can only hunt a phantom for so long before the lack of a body becomes suspicious. So the truth finally surfaces.
Yes, it was eventually revealed, piece by piece, to be exactly what it was. A local joke involving carved wood and some guys yelling in the bushes that got way, way out of hand.
Yeah, but the fascinating part of this history is that the truth wasn't actually strong enough to kill the monster.
It rarely is. By the time the pragmatic truth came out, the story had already crossed county lines. It had spread across Vermont and deeply into neighboring states.
The truth is almost always localized and boring, but a good myth travels fast and far.
It really possesses an inertia that facts struggle to slow down.
And the legacy of the wild man was incredibly stubborn. Even after it was thoroughly publicly debunked, people continued to tell the tale of the Glastonbury Wild Man around campfires for decades.
It became a staple. Historical accounts note that some folks, quote-unquote, half believed it anyway, despite fully knowing it started as a hoax.
Which is wild to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
And Glastonbury itself eventually became a ghost town.
Yeah, the logging dried up, the harsh winters drove people away, the economy collapsed, and the town was just abandoned.
But the legend lived on.
Yeah.
In fact, if you take a drive through southern Vermont today, maybe passing those quiet, winding mountain roads near the Alpine Homestead, taking a mental detour into this history makes the landscape feel completely alive.
Oh, absolutely. Knowing that history transforms a simple drive through the woods into a journey through a living, breathing piece of folklore.
The trees definitely look a little different when you know what used to hide behind them.
For sure.
So what does this all mean? We know the physical mechanics of the hoax. We know the pranksters got in way over their heads, terrified of their own heavily armed neighbors.
Right?
We know the media fueled the fire. But why do people, why do you, listening to this right now, cling to a story even when we know, objectively, that it is factually untrue?
It's a great question.
Why did those Vermont loggers sit around the campfire and half believe in a monster they knew was a fabrication?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a classic New England narrative that highlights the very core of human nature and cognitive dissonance. We are a species defined by our imagination and our deep-seated need for community storytelling. The truth that some bored guys made wooden footprints to scare their friends is a mildly funny 5-minute anecdote.
Right.
But the myth that a giant prehistoric undiscovered beast is roaming the dark woods just beyond the firelight, that is a masterpiece.
The truth is simply less appealing, less romantic than the myth.
Exactly. We hold on to these stories, we half believe them, because they make our world feel a little more mysterious, a little more untamed, and frankly a lot more entertaining to live in.
It really is the ultimate testament to the enduring power of a well-timed story. You start with a few fake footprints pushed into the cold Vermont mud, and a couple of guys giggling in the brush.
Just a tiny spark.
Yeah, and from that insignificant spark, you birth a regional legend that commands newspaper headlines, mobilizes armed posses, serves as the ultimate scapegoat for lost farm animals, and literally outlives the town it was born in.
The buildings of Glastonbury are gone, reclaimed by the forest, but the wild man is still making us talk today.
I highly encourage you, the listener, to think about the local legends in your own area. Dig into the history behind the ghost stories.
It's always worth a look.
Or better yet, share those tall tales around your own fire pit next time you are hanging out at the Alpine Homestead. You never truly know which one started as a joke that just got entirely out of hand.
And looking back at the timeline of that escalating joke leaves us with something quite profound to consider regarding how human beings process the world around them, especially when they are terrified.
It really does. Because since we know with absolute historical certainty that this creature was entirely a hoax manufactured by a few local pranksters, I want you to think about the very first person who confidently reported an actual sighting of the creature to the newspapers.
Right, because there was no physical monster out there to see.
Exactly.
Mm.
So did their mind completely betray them out there in those thick, terrifying woods, turning a shifting shadow and a snapping pine branch into a 10-foot hairy giant?
Or
Or did they simply want to be part of the cultural moment so badly, did they want their name in the paper so desperately, that they flat out lied, inadvertently helping the pranksters build a myth that swallowed the whole town?